You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Greetings, Rainbow Warriors. I'm coming to you from Croatia today, where I have been busy organizing my upcoming retreats in Sicily and Bali. Sicily in September is a nature and yoga retreat where we'll visit ancient sites and natural wonders on Sicily, sail around on an actual pirate ship, explore secret beaches, practice yoga daily, and learn conscious eating recipes from my ecourse. Bali in October is a 2-week wellness workation for conscious creatives and entrepreneurs or remote workers to co-live and work with a group of like-minded people while practicing daily yoga and conscious eating, and enjoying special Balinese traditions like a water temple blessing and snorkeling around some of the last remaining healthy coral reefs in the world, and even swimming with manta rays, guys. I did that myself last year, and it blew my mind so much that I knew I needed to share it with you. Find links to those in the show notes and on my Visionary Lifestyle and Podcast Facebook page, and sign up quick because early bird prices are just about to end. So now on to today's show. Today's guest is Jules Schroeder. Jules is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, the founder at Unconventional Life, a Forbes contributor, and a millennial expert. Unconventional Life is a global community of like-minded entrepreneurs, creatives, and thought leaders. She hosts masterminding events for millennial entrepreneurs in exotic locations, while also running a podcast for entrepreneurs on the Forbes Under 30 channel, ranked the #1 podcast for entrepreneurs in 2007. Her mission is to inspire and empower millennials to live a life by their own design, where their greatest source of happiness is also their source of income. Ranked by Inc. magazine as one of the top 27 female entrepreneurs changing the world in 2017, Jules founded her first 6-figure company at 18 and her first 7-figure company at 22. At 28, Jules is leading a movement to empower millennials to create a life by their own design by learning from successful leaders who have left behind the 9-to-5 for a life they love. She also has a digital marketing agency specializing in social media strategies to create remotely based businesses. I met Jules at the DNX Global Conference in Lisbon last year. I was struck by her story, her credentials, and most of all, her enthusiasm. She has an impressive history and strong ability to bounce back from adversity and use it as a springboard for future growth. It was, after all, a near-death experience where she got to choose to come back into her body to share her gifts. I love this conversation. Jules drops a lot of wisdom and practical advice for entrepreneurs looking to live life by their own design. We talk about visualization, yoga, and she shares some of her tools for creating and living the unconventional life many of us dream of. Find links to Jules' work in the show notes at visionary-lifestyle.com/podcast. I hope you enjoy the show. And don't forget to follow my Instagram account for behind-the-scenes travel stories and more. You can find that on Instagram at visionary_lifestyle_guide. And of course, follow Visionary Lifestyle Podcast for show announcements. Enjoy and namaste. Jules Schroeder, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yay. I'm so grateful that you found the time, carved out the time. I know you've been so busy here in Lisbon post-DNX. And you rocked it with your speech on stage. I was really impressed with hearing your life story and all of the trials and tribulations and, you know, how things evolved in your life. And you're a powerhouse. Oh my goddess. Oh my goddess.
Oh my goddess.
Oh my goddess.
I love it.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on. You're producing a lot of content. You have a lot of offerings. I mean, you're really putting a lot of things out into the world. And you're traveling, right? You're traveling a lot too?
I go to Iceland tomorrow, actually, from Lisbon. And I'll be hanging out with some Olympians, Arctic char hunting, swimming with whales and puffins, and pushing physical boundaries and accessing transformation from that perspective.
Whoa.
And then I'm back to Colorado, and then I'm off to Nicaragua after that.
And what's going on in Nicaragua?
So we're actually hosting a intimate experience for younger entrepreneurs, and they were on the 18 to 22-year-old range, which is not usually our normal demographic with Unconventional Life, but it was a way to bring people together and for 6 days and give back and essentially create an acceleration and help people discover what are their talents, what are the gifts, what are the things they care about, and the inquiry of how do you create this vehicle, this business, this structure to support yourself out in the world. So it'll be a early stage conversation that we'll be doing there, and then 2 months later I'll be back in Nicaragua for our main Unconventional Life event.
So let's talk about an unconventional life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so living the unconventional life has been definitely like the poster child for it in my life.
Yes, I
see
that. That was exactly the words that were in my head. You're the poster child for this,
Yep, and so for those that are tuning in, I was a sponsored snowboarder for a while, grew up the oldest of 5 girls, Puerto Rican, speak fluent Spanish. I also teach yoga, been facilitating about 5 years. I've run several companies, and just have a love for expression. I also just finished up an album in Vancouver right before I came here, and we celebrated our 100th episode on our podcast yesterday, and my sister's like, I don't know how you found time to squeeze an album into like the travel, into the business, into the speaking. But what I've found is that the more I stay with my gifts and the more I stay with my passions and ultimately following my highest excitement in every moment, I use that as my compass. And so often when we are multi-passionate, and for those tuning in, you might say to yourself, I have a lot of passions. How do I know which one to do in which order? Or so often, we swing to the business professional side, and then, we compartmentalize the creative expressions, or we go all in on creativity, and then there's no money to support the creativity. So it's this either or reality. And I found for myself that I tend to just follow what is exciting me, and ultimately where I'm getting feedback externally to validate movement. And what I mean by that is our environments give us a lot of feedback all the time. And sometimes it will look like doors opening where they seem closed or where doors seemed non-existent. And that's happened over and over again in my life in terms of different opportunities. Case in point, I spoke to my former partner, about 1.5 years ago that I wanted to start writing for Forbes, and had no blogging experience, no blog, and really just came as a desire in the moment. I would love to start doing this. A week later, I get an email from Forbes that's like, hey, we would love to have you start writing for us. And I was like, well, I'd actually love to do this podcast. It's called Unconventional Life. I didn't have a podcast. I knew nothing about podcasting. And they're like, why don't you make it the official podcast of Forbes Under 30? Can you be live in 3 weeks? And I said, sure. Of course. And called up everybody that I knew that was in the podcasting space and was like, how do we do this? And how do we figure it out? And in 3 weeks, I was literally sitting outside the hot springs in Iceland the first time I was there. And I hit send to my first ever blog piece and first ever podcast, terrified. And it got 6,000 views overnight. I was like, holy crap, we are now live with a podcast and blog and Forbes, and it's a whole business. But I find that, just speaking that into existence seemed exciting for me. And it would have been one thing to try to do many things to make that possible. I could have researched every Forbes editor I knew. I could have sent 100 emails to validate this thing, but I just spoke it out there. I was committed to this particular thing, unattached to how it showed up, and I allowed my environment, I looked to my environment to give me feedback. And it was literally like, here's a door, here's an email, let me show you this way. And on the flip side, often we can get after things or business stuff or creative stuff where it can feel like we're banging our head against the wall, and we just do it again and again and again. And I use that resistance on the other side to be like, okay, I know myself to be competent, I know myself to be capable. If I'm having this resistance, chances are it's time to pause, reflect, and see if there's something out of integrity or out of alignment, and can I tweak it? Because I know when I am in alignment, things are effortless and they do move. So the combination of all those factors is definitely how I pioneer my own unconventional life, and ultimately how I pioneer the expressions of my gifts into the world.
Well said. Wow. Okay. I think about that too. Like, I can imagine for people listening going, oh, you just say you want it and then it just happens. Like, it's that easy. But I'm glad you circled around to, when it doesn't flow effortlessly, like, what do we need to look at? Can we dive a little deeper into that for people who are listening and maybe going, yeah, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to say what I want and have it appear just that easily. What tools can we give people to work through those blocks?
Yeah. So, when I think back to my own life story, I very much for a lot of my time was not able to access intuition. We talk about manifesting, we talk about flow. These were words that just were in my vocabulary, but not in my direct experience. And it wasn't until I had a business partner right before I turned 25, embezzled a bunch of money, went into $200,000 worth of debt overnight. And over the next 8 months, lost everything that I thought was important to me. The relationship with the guy I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, all of my savings. Working with us at the time was $30,000 per client. My health started to go into the ground. Finally, end of 8 months, I put my hands in the air. I was like, okay, I've had enough. And I noticed, that my desire in that point was to start more companies, do more, work harder, get after it. And in doing that, I was just spinning my wheels. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, where we're just in action all the time and we're not making progress. And we live in this hustle society a lot of times that says just work 16 hours a day and you'll get there somehow. And for me, I find I work 4 to 6 and I'm way more effective. But circling back to all of that, it was in that moment where I then said, okay, if I just pause and I reflect and I heal and I give myself space, what can happen? And so I started to develop a core set of capacities to be able to listen to myself and able to give myself space. So coming back to your question, how do we just speak things into reality? I find and I believe that we're all actually vibrating at a frequency all the time. And that our desires and the things that we want in our life, they all are operating at frequency. And as we're able to give ourselves space, we can actually be in the frequency of the things we want. So we perceive there to be this gap. There's where I am now and where I want to be. But if you actually consider you are in the frequency of what you want and it's already happening, you just have to literally ask for it, as in claim it. Like not ask and hope, but like know that it's there and bring it towards you, that's when it becomes possible. And only through the space, and only through the space, can you hear it and can you have enough space for that to come. Because if you're working all the time and you're stressed out and you're not eating great and your channel is blocked, then there's no space for that to even occur.
Yes, perfect. I'm so glad that you're talking about the vibration, the frequency, because I can't tell you how many conversations I've had on this podcast that this is the common denominator that people come to, right? Is that everything is energy, everything is vibration. So it's a matter of us getting ourselves to that vibration that matches what it is that we want, right? So there's not this distance, this disassociation, or incongruency is a word, right? So practices that bring us into a harmonious higher vibration are what? Like what do you do personally? What do you teach your clients? What are the practices that get your vibration where it needs to be to actually attract or match with the things that you actually desire?
Yeah, great question. I think, where I started, coming back to that story and that place of the embezzlement and everything else, where I first began this journey was with this game that I call the Hell Yes or No, which is simply, literally, if it's not a hell yes, if it's not a full-bodied, resonant yes, then it's just a no or not right now. And so often we get these invitations in life that it's, you want to come to this party? Can you help me this weekend? Do you want to be on this podcast? Do you want to be on this business thing? And we say yes when it's a maybe yes or a should yes, an obligatory yes, or we try to talk ourselves into it could be this hell yes if this and that happens. Well, if I go to that party, I don't really want to, but maybe if I meet that person, then it could be that hell yes qualifier. And I got curious, for 60 days after I had this point in my life, I said, what if I only acted on the hell yeses? What would my life look like and be like? So first of all, I talked to a lot of people in my life and I was like, hey guys, response time is going to be a little bit slower. We're in the business of always having things coming to us. So just to create that buffer and say, hey, I'm running an experiment. And for those hearing this, you don't have to take it for 60 days. You could even do this right now for the next 48 hours or even this next week. Tell everyone in your life you're running this experiment. And I found that through having awareness, just that being even the first step of I'm getting an invitation, is this hell yes? And instantly, you don't have to actually question if it's a hell yes. If it's a hell yes, you're just in action. You know it.
It's clear.
It's very clear. You don't even have to think about it. But it's when that maybe yes happens that it can get a little sticky. And I just found when it was maybe yes, it was actually a no. And the more that I said no, the more space that got made. And like building a muscle and like working out at the gym, I CrossFit as well as doing yoga, I found that the more that I said no, the more opportunities started attracting themselves to me that were more in alignment and ultimately more at that higher frequency of who I was and how to best serve myself. And so I said no a lot more. And as I did that, I found that I was then getting grander and grander opportunities. And I think the one pitfall too is that we start getting better opportunities than the ones we have now, and we think they're better, so that maybe those are the hell yeses. You have to be willing to say no to those too. Because if you say no to the 9s for the 10, and I know you've had Jackie Netchell on this podcast as well, then that's when you really get those things that are in alignment and ultimately the ways of raising your frequency. And as a buffer, guys, it took me 45 days to sync up this awareness with this action. But I've been putting this practice into my life the last 3 years. And I find that those hell yeses are direct, intuitive knowings of our intuition speaking to us and of us being able to claim what we want. And so if this practice or listening and being in alignment with intuition is more new to you, it's a great place to start. And you could even start reflecting at the end of your day with, what decisions did I have? How did they feel? And what was the outcome? And notice when it's not a hell yes and you act and you see the results, usually it's kind of a maybe experience anyways. So giving yourself permission to be in that higher frequency.
Yeah, beautifully put. And I think of it as being like another, and this is another example of addition by subtraction. So subtracting the no's or the, maybe laters, right? And that obviously creates space for the higher vibration things to come, or the more aligned circumstances to come in. It's almost another place that I practice this is with food. So as we let go of, we subtract, it's addition by subtraction. So by letting go of the processed foods and the unhealthy food choices, we just automatically move into the higher vibration choices, right? So
yeah, well, absolutely. And even alcohol as well. Like I personally don't really drink anymore. And I find that actually when drinking, not that there's anything wrong with alcohol, but it does lower my vibration. And I do feel that directly as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so on the idea of intuition, because as the podcast is called, Visionary Lifestyle, it's very much about the third eye chakra. I mean, this is my whole brand for 10 years has been visionary. So this is very intuition based. Third eye chakra. So I do and teach a lot of practices around that. We talked a little bit before we started recording about visioning, and you said that that's a part of your process. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So I have never really been a meditator or into meditation in the typical way. And I tried. For a while, I was like, maybe something's wrong with me. Like everyone else thinks meditation's kind of cool, but I just it wasn't working for me. And I found in my shavasanas and yoga, I would get access to it. When I found visualization specifically, it ignited the spark in me, and that really set me off. And I've been getting these premonition, intuitive dreams for a long time. And I have a lot of these mystic gifts that I have access to, whether it's knowings in my dreams, or sometimes I'm with someone and I'll get these images that will come to me, and I use it all as data. And it was about a year ago that I had one of my intuitive dreams, and I saw this vision for 30 entrepreneurs gathering, and I woke up and the first words out of my mouth were Bali. And it was a vision for this live event, and I saw literally this white tablecloth and this like balinese decor and this beach, and I could feel the ocean waves, and it was this felt just knowing and sensation. And so long and the short of it, I sat with that dream for about 2 weeks, and I'm like, what do? I don't know anything about live events. I wasn't interested in live events, but I felt like life was pulling me in a direction. It was one of these pings, and so I decided to launch an event. And in that process, a friend of mine who was mentoring me through it told me and shared with me this visualization technique. And this is one that I had been using prior, but really solidified for me after this dream. And what I find is that when you want something in your life, if you're not able to be clear on it, as in you can't see it, feel it, taste it, like be in the experience of it, it's really hard for you to be in frequency or vibrational match with the thing that you want. And so I use visualization where usually for about 10 minutes, especially if I'm in a big creative spurt, like we're about to do another event coming up at the end of November. So I'm actively envisioning what I want this next chapter to look like. I find that I do this practice, 3 to 4 times a week. And it's just about 10 minutes. And I take myself through it where I sit, I pause, I take a few deep breaths, I drop in, connect my feet Usually I like to do this outside, connect my feet into the earth, center myself. And then I get to see and I imagine myself being where I want to be. And for me with that dream, and after I said yes to the event, I pictured the opening circle. I literally pictured what the chairs looked like, how many of them. I pictured the faces, what the people looked like. I even imagined myself sweating in this dress.
Whoa, really? This is really specific.
And like really like felt it there. And I think that's where it becomes so important, is you have to really be in the experience of it. Mm-hmm. And I think the visioning, where I think the pitfalls are, is when you're not in that experience of it, it's not clear. And when things aren't clear, that's usually when we don't get what we're wanting. Mm-hmm. And in imagining that and staying with that, I literally kept reflecting on it day in and day out, and the people that I would talk to come to the event. And then flash forward 8 weeks later, we sold out the event, and I'm sitting in the opening circle, and I literally could feel the light shining on my face and myself sweating like I did in the dream. And it was just literally pulling me forward every step of the way from the 7 weeks from that moment of visualizing forward. And I kept referring back to it. Mm-hmm. And so it's a practice that I can offer to all of you guys that are tuning in. If you've never tried visualizing, the more specific you can be with it, the more it allows yourself to be a match to it. And last night I was just talking with this woman who, is picturing her perfect job. And she's, working at this winery, and she wants to do something else. And she's like, oh, can you take a look at my CV, my resume? And I'd love to send it out. And I'm like, well, what do you want? And she's like, oh, I just, I'm in communications, and I want to be a VP of this, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but I don't actually hear what you want. Like, what does your experience of that actually seem like? What time are you waking up in the morning? Where are you waking up? Are you driving to work? Are you waking up, rolling out of bed, and having your laptop with you? Who are you interacting with? What are the people like? What do they feel like? What types of tasks are you doing? Are you on email a lot? Are you on the phone a lot? Are you moving around a lot? What does it actually seem like when you leave? Is there a leaving? Is there a specific time? How are you eating? What's that like? And actually considering the direct experience moment by moment by moment, and getting specific and clear on that. Mm-hmm. And when you're clear on those pieces, even if they're just, benchmarks that you're using as it gets clearer, that gives you the place to actually ask, speak, know, and call forward exactly what you want, and not something close, but something perfect, by drilling down that way.
Perfect for you, right?
Exactly.
In this moment in your life, in this chapter, this phase.
Totally.
And purpose is something that you talk about a lot. Thank you for sharing that tool. I hope that's valuable for people. I think that I agree, with everything that you said, and as specific as we can get, right down to you sweating. It's perfect. Yeah. It's great. So purpose is something that you talk a lot about and coach people on, right? Because I guess I feel very fortunate that I'm easily connected to my purpose, but I recognize that there are many people who have not identified their purpose in life, their purpose in the world. And how do you guide people closer to that?
Yeah. So I would say, for me, it actually wasn't until I would even say recently, where I felt like for the first time in my life, it was a total 100% hell yes. And I find my relationship to purpose is that it's constantly evolving. So whoever said find the purpose and then, go on life and it just unfolds and it's like a one trajectory, obviously wasn't speaking to me.
Right.
And some people are so blessed that they actually do find that one track and it totally works for them. Mm-hmm. And for me, that wasn't the case. And so I find that I'm constantly evolving, and I have this practice that I call your stupid human trick, if you will. And it's like your ninja skill. And it's the thing that that you're exceptionally good at. And most of the time as we move through life, we actually only spend about 20% of our time doing it. So for me, for a long time, it used to be growing and developing people. So I had a huge company and 25 so employees, and I was constantly getting to exercise my stupid human trick. Mm-hmm. Then I was like, okay, it's evolved again. And then, most recently it's taken this form of being able to listen to people, find their gifts, and show them their gifts before they're able to recognize it in themselves. So what structure for fulfillment did I create out of that? I launched a podcast where I get to literally do that every day. Mm-hmm. And so I find that most of us actually spend only about 20% of our time doing it. When in reality, if we spend 80% of our time in this role, in this particular stupid human trick, that's when our life rearranges itself, or when we get, the business opportunities or the financial component to actually support ourselves with it. So I would say the first thing, if you're sitting there, is I'd ask yourself, how do you spend your time? If you literally took out a piece of paper right now and you wrote down, here's how I spend my time. I get up, I write, or I go to work, or I talk to people, being very, very specific. And then in that, asking yourself what actually excites you. What's the thing that when you're doing it, you find it's like one step forward and you get 10 steps out. I find I can do one really great podcast interview and listen to someone, and then the whole business moves forward because listeners hear it and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is like obviously her ninja skill.
Yeah.
But if I was like behind the scenes editing podcast audios, which I could be doing, and which when I first started, it would not be utilizing my stupid human trick at all. So I find that when you are operating with the one step forward, 10 steps out, that's another really great resource. But asking yourself, what's that stupid human trick? Allowing that to be the access point is a really great place to start. Another piece I would add is kind of this rapid visioning process, which is essentially just throwing stuff out there into the world and using, your environment for feedback as you create moment by moment by moment. So just staying present to, I've got an idea, I've got a vision, let me just throw this into my environment. As in, it could be like, I'm just going to make a Facebook post. And I think I shared this at our talk, which was literally like being heartbroken one night a few months ago and saying, I wonder where my, badass women are at. I'd love to go on a great trip. And having 150 comments come onto the post and seeing great results. And then from there, launching a Facebook group, launching an event, and having an $80,000 revenue stream in a matter of a few days by staying present moment by moment by moment. So we're very powerful, intuitive creatures. And I think if you just speak it out there, that often can give you insight into finding your purpose as well, because sometimes things that we don't think we're good at are things we think everyone is good at. Everyone should be able to listen to people and pull their gifts. But they're not. And so your environment can give you great cues as well.
Yeah, I like that. And I think about the people who may do that, follow that intuition, that for the rapid visioning is really the feedback, right, that comes when you actually put yourself out there. So what if you have the inspiration, you go, oh, this could be a great idea, and you put it on Facebook and nobody comments? Then what?
Yeah, well, that's part of the human experience. And so, and sometimes I find it comes back to this resistance piece that I don't think it's like, you think about people like J.K. Rowling and Pat Flynn, shared about this. You go at something and 46 times you're, rejected, and then that's like the 47th time that it happens. But I think more than anything, if you know yourself to be capable and competent and you throw it out there and nothing sticks, you can have the option to do it again. But I think it's more in the feeling of it. And, earlier this summer, I launched this program called Influencer School, which was to teach people how to have impact, influence, income in 60 days. And I launched the program, and the moment it went live, I got this gut feeling, and I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, I don't think I should be doing this anymore. But everything, it seemed so exciting before, it seemed great. And we ended up actually selling out the program, and I realized that it was a 90% hell yes, but not 100%. And I decided to refund everybody back $15,000.
Whoa.
And my sister's like, I think you're nuts. And I was like, but this actually isn't alignment. I could feel the resistance coming up for me.
Yeah.
And I imagined what the rest of that experience of 8 weeks with these people would look like, which would be resistance, resistance, and not being integrity with what I'm teaching. But I share that as, you can throw stuff out there and sometimes it sticks. I launched another retreat and my heart wasn't fully in it. And it took a week and we had nobody apply. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to close this.
Yeah.
Because it just, my heart wasn't in it. So I think there's different cues and ways you can perceive this particular strategy. But I usually find that if it's the right timing, the idea is in alignment, and it's in integrity with you and your values, and you put it out there and you share about it via Facebook, via LinkedIn, or even to a phone call or a random person you meet on the street, the excitement and energy that will come up in that experience, if you feel expanded and enlivened by it, then it's a really great indicator to keep going. And if it feels contractive, or if you're not getting any feedback by it, especially if you keep going, especially in how you're holding it yourself, it's usually a great indicator that it's time to pivot, or at least time to pause, step back, and see if there's a piece you might be missing or not fully considering.
Do some more self-reflection around it.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And what about teaching yoga? Why are you deciding to teach yoga, and what do you get out of teaching?
Yeah, so it started, I've been a yogi since I was about 16, 28 now. And I started with Bikram yoga. And was really into it. And then I moved up to the mountains in Colorado, and they didn't have a Bikram studio, and I was so mad. I boycotted yoga for three months. I was like, I can't do vinyasa or hatha. I was like, this is not Bikram yoga. And then my like body and my mind were so hungry. I was like, fine. And I actually fell in love with that kind of yoga more, and I don't practice Bikram yoga anymore.
Oh, that's funny. Look at that evolution.
Yeah, and I ended up going to a teacher training, my first 200-hour, and got trained in vinyasa yoga and hot yoga, and then eventually yoga sculpt, and then yin yoga and restorative yoga, and I've done a lot of different certifications over the last 5 years now. But I find more than anything, especially with my travel schedule, I teach once a week. And I used to teach, 4 or 5 times a week, but today I teach just about once a week. And it's just this commitment for myself with teaching specifically of coming back to my mat, and it's this grounding orientation point. And same with practicing. It's like no matter where I am or what's happening in my life, every other variable can be changing, but that mat is just the constant. It's the consistency. And I find having an orientation point, for me, that does occur a lot like yoga, or at times even CrossFit, that it's so integral. It gives me my sanity and that grounding. And otherwise, left to my own devices, I'm like spinning into the ether, trying to grab onto stuff. And so I view yoga as that constant, and especially carrying it with me for now 12 years. It just feels like home. Even if I'm not in home or whatever home means these days, it's just coming home every time I'm on my mat, and and that just feels really good.
I love this. Yeah, it is. In fact, in an interview I did yesterday, that came up the idea of yoga being home, as we're here in this digital nomad space now here in Lisbon with the DNX conference. It's we're surrounded by everybody who's really moving around a lot. So yoga really can be that one common denominator in your life, that one thing that doesn't change, right? Well, everything else is changing. The places you are, the people you're around, all of this, right? Waking up in a different city pretty often, right? It can be that through line. And teaching, I mean, do you find that that's something that feeds you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I even have friends sometimes where I won't be practicing as often, but I'll still keep my commitment to teaching. And they're like, why teach if you're not on your mat every day like you were, and you're busy? Why even bother? And I'm like, it's just this commitment to, it's like the energy that happens in that co-created space. And I find the expression of teaching is like co-creative feedback in the yoga space. And it's a full circle of, it almost like it completes my own practice even more by being able to be on the other side of it. And it's just such a nourishing experience for me. And I never even envisioned being a teacher when I first started. Actually, when I went to teacher training, I just wanted to go deeper. I just wanted more awareness and more knowledge. And I was like, these asanas, these postures, what's actually happening? And for me, the way that our internal systems, like our circulatory system, digestive system, immune system, like all the health benefits of how it connects, I was so fascinated by that. And so being able to share that knowledge with other people is it's so important. And that extends for me now, whether it's doing that in the yoga room or even the way that I approach my self-care routine or the way that I approach my eating routine. It's knowledge of how our internal systems work, make all our external systems out of our body, that much more attuned as well.
Amen. Yes. Thank God for yoga. I often say too that I would think I would be an insane person. Like, I don't know where I would be. It's the thing, right, that grounds you. I mean, anytime any kind of emotional swing you might be having, you can come to the mat and come to center. And let's be clear, we don't even really need a mat, but we're just talking about this. But, I mean, you can do it on grass, you can do it on sand, you can do it yoga anywhere, anytime. It's free. You can share it with other people. I mean, it's the best thing ever. Yoga is the best thing ever. Yeah, and I would imagine, I mean, do you offer it as a tool for your clients, where people are kind of spinning around and not knowing their purpose? I mean, is this a tool that's in your toolbox that you point people towards?
Yeah, I think for me, there's definitely elements of it that I like to incorporate. And, at our 5-day business accelerators, people come in for business, and yet we're really actually creating a space for cellular activation and integral shifts. And we start the day with yoga. And so it's very much in the conversation, if you will. But I find, with my clients specifically, there's a lot of stuff around breath and ultimately body awareness. And most of the times, and even mental awareness, most of the times we don't witness even the thoughts that we're having about something, our relationship to our experience, our relationship to others in our experience.
Yeah.
And awareness is, cultivated so much through the yoga and through the asanas that piece, is definitely incorporated. And just dropping in your body. It's one of the first things I do is we walk around life sometimes just so in our heads without even realizing it. And my sister's interviewing me on our 100th podcast episode, and usually I'm always the one doing interviews. We were like 10 minutes in, I was like, how are you doing? She's like, I'm like spinning and I don't know what to do, and I'm all like usually behind the scenes, and like, I think we should just pause. Let's just pause this and let's do like a let's just do a few minute meditation, come back to our bodies, get up, integrate. And we did that, and she's like, can we start over? It's like, sure. Oh, okay. But it's just that subtle practice of coming back into the body, coming back into the breath, even when we started today, starting with just a few breaths that you can find on the mat, but can so easily be translated off. So
yes, yeah. Well, breath is so key, right? I mean, the pranayama, of course, is part of the 8 limbs of yoga, and every chance I get, I want to remind people that yoga is not just the asana. It's not just the third limb. We don't build the house starting on the 3rd floor, right? We have to have the yamas and the niyamas, and build the foundation, and then of course pranayama. I find that one of my greatest gifts that I receive from yoga is that coming back to the breath, and it's I love sharing that with people, and any time that we can take one full deep conscious breath, this is yoga, and it's the first place we really need to go when we start spinning out, right? So this is why it's all yoga. People think, well, take a breath. This is yoga. This is the yoga of life, right? When things get out of control, the first thing you got to do is take a deep breath.
Yeah, right.
I'm enjoying that. It's been really intense here the last days here in Lisbon. I showed up not expecting anything from Lisbon and not knowing anything about it, and just having a really intense experience here. So that just takes me back to gratitude that I have these tools and this practice, right, to come back to center. And when I teach my classes, I talk about we go into mountain pose, and just all the alignment points, right, from the soles of the feet all the way up to the crown of the head, and just reminding people that this is a gift that you can give yourself anytime, any place, whatever's going on around you, you can just come back to center. And this is one of the greatest gifts of yoga, helping us stay in the center, coming back to the center, practicing. And that's why it's called a practice, right? It's not practice, it's practice, not perfection. We practice coming back to center.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, so many times too, like speaking of some of the poses, it's like even, wind removing or supine twist or things like that. I was on the CrossFit, gym today and went out for that. And I was like, being in another country, sometimes your belly can be off, or your energy can be off. And it's like, let me just do this pose for a little bit or that pose for a little bit. So it's constantly these repertoires where you can almost self-heal or self-diagnose to complement whatever is happening in your experience, versus let me take this pill to help with that. It's like, oh, hold on, I got this. Wind removing pose, knee into my chest. Yeah. Breathe for a few minutes, right. Switch it out. All right, I'm good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is so empowering. Yoga is so empowering this way. And I love that you said those words, because I often say that yoga is a self-healing tool. And I really do recommend for people to take a teacher training, even if they're not planning to teach, because it's incredible how much it deepens your personal practice, don't you think?
Oh my gosh, totally. I mean, it's why I'm 5 years later, I keep taking more trainings. I'm like, I want more.
Yeah, deeper, even deeper, because it's endless, right? You can keep going internally, inside, it's like endless. What else are you passionate about that we haven't talked about yet? Where's your energy going these days? What's getting you up and out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, so I very much view myself like a channel where I have stuff that comes through and out me into life. And in my own experience, we are all channels. And you might not use that word, and your expression of channel might look different than my expression, but we are all vessels. We are literally allowing stuff to come through us, into us, and out and be moved by us. And so part of why I love this conversation is because it's the nature of keeping the vessel, your human physical body, clear and clean, so that you can receive the information and ultimately have it come out in the most effective and integrated and effortless way. And so one of the ways in which I channel is through my music. And so I just literally finish this album. And this has taken me 9 years to do my own original tracked album. I've had videos, I've had covers, I've had singles, but there's been a lot of stuff in my space around really embracing and owning and ultimately claiming this vulnerable gift of mine. And for those hearing this, if you've been sitting on a project for like 2 months or even 2 years, like I'm saying, this took me 9 years. And after our last event in Italy that we did, we had 50 entrepreneurs in a castle. I had so much music come through me, and literally had about 11 songs come. And how my music works is I will make up a full song on the fly, or even, spoken word improv poetry on the fly, record it, transcribe it, and that becomes a song. And it's a beautiful process when it's flowing, and it can be really terrifying when it's not. It's like, is the channel broken? Did I do something wrong? Have I been eating like too many carbs, or just eating not in an aligned way? Have I been drinking too much wine, or any of those things? But I find it's a constant practice to present moment awareness, which is also part of the yoga conversation. But I just left Vancouver right before flying to Lisbon and finished 7 songs, and I got this message that was like, it's going to be 7 songs, and I weeded out some of the others. And people are like, so what are you going to do with this album? And natural question, right? You commit yourself to a project, you should know what you're going to do with it. And I was like, I don't know. I just know that I was given these songs, and that felt like the first piece was to get them out of me, allow them to move through me. Okay, that happened. And the piece that I just got literally a few weeks ago was, I think it's actually meant to be a multimedia expression, where I'm going to film a music video in a different country and have each song correlate with this visual experience of this country, and really allow the beauty to come back full circle. And how that will look and when it'll be done and all of that stuff, we're going to be launching it in mid-October. But it's just this creative project and outlet that's just been nagging at me for so long. And I think we can all relate this too. It's like, I felt like if I never got this out of me, I would feel sad when I died. If I never got to get my art out in this way, even if it was the worst, ugliest, messiest art possible, it just needed to come out. Like, I would have felt like I was robbing myself. And now to actually stand back, I just got the proofs of the songs. I'm like, holy crap, this is like really good. I played it for Jackie, one of my friends, and she's also on your show a few days ago. She's like, Jules. I was like, I know. And so giving her little sound bites and things like that. And it's just really a milestone for me. Like, yes, it'll be cool that it'll live out in the world, but for me personally, it's just a milestone of my own commitment to my own evolution, and ultimately really like balancing the expressions of myself and honoring the channel and honoring the ability that I can have my gifts move through me in so many expressions. That I can have my gifts move through me in business, and I can have my gifts move through me in yoga, and I can have my gifts move through me in song. And the last track on the album is called The Priestess. And
nice.
It's a spoken word poem about igniting our priestess in every one of us. And the producer, when I laid the song down, he's like, I've never heard of a song like this before. I was like, I know. It just kind of came. And so, so it's a really exciting time to be able to do that.
I'm looking forward to hearing it, and congratulations on that. It must feel amazing.
Yeah, totally amazing. Yeah.
So you are a living example of a woman who's connected with her purpose and, out there making it all happen. You are quite a multifaceted being, which is something that's really beautiful to see you embracing that. And like many others actually in this community, it seems to be a thing, a common theme that's recurring here in this community that I'm seeing. And for me, it's giving me a place of like a feeling of homecoming, because I've always been super eclectic, and I used to have a store and it was the one-stop shop, because I couldn't just sell this or that. And I really appreciate that. This is going into the millennial conversation a little bit, right? Do you see this as something that's emerging in our world now, that we don't necessarily have to just be on one track in one career? You want to do this when you go to college for this, you get your degree and that's what you die doing, or you retire at 65 and buy the house and have the 2.5 kids. I mean, do you see this kind of multifaceted career path as something that's coming for millennials, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely think it is coming for millennials, and I would say for really all of us. And I think, and what I've been seeing, in my work is this activation that is happening all over the planet. And I imagine why, podcasts and shows like yours exist, and why your listeners tune in, and why you exist, is that we're all feeling this resonance of activation. And as a millennial, I think the difference, and for millennials, is our filter and our barrier, the amount of stuff, aka the amount of years we've been alive, is just less. So there's less barrier, or less stuff to sort through. And what I find, now, especially for me, and what I see, Unconventional Life, my company, my Unconventional Life podcast, wouldn't have been created a few years ago, because there just wouldn't have been a conversation or a awareness or activation around it.
Right.
And now it's becoming so apparent that you don't have to just go to college, you don't have to get a degree to make money in the world. There's 1,000,001 ways to support yourself, and the possibilities are infinite. And so I find that a lot of millennials, more even so earlier millennials, I look, I'm the oldest of 5 girls, my youngest siblings are 16 and 18. And so when I look at their age, they're just no filter all the way. They're like, I'm on YouTube this. My one sibling's got like 20,000 followers on a Tumblr blog and does anime writing and is already making money and gets gifts in the mail and like this whole thing, which I'm like, that even exists as a, right. as a potential option. So I would say them even less filter, but I think millennials specifically, we're really pioneering it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it so cool for our different generations to co-create in a lot of ways is that millennials are pioneering, yet sometimes we miss, this older perspective, or just this other integrated wisdom that, when the two get to meet, we inspire each other.
Right.
And like, hey, I've got no filter, but you've got a lot of wisdom. So let's take my no filtered expression with your wisdom, and maybe I'll give you more permission for expression, and you can give me more context for wisdom. And the merging of those is really exciting. And so on my podcast, it's just profiling people that earn their living in non-traditional ways and having a home for this conversation to live in the world. And same thing with our, live events that we do. A lot of people that we come are women that are over the age of 40 that are having these massive activations that are just, life's gone a certain way. Maybe they've been married, maybe they haven't been, and are just awakening to themselves, to their purpose. Even if they haven't figured it out, it's their knowing. They're knowing that there's more than what they've experienced, knowing that there's more inside of them, and even if they're not clear what it looks like, being committed to the commitment of the unknown. And that has just been exciting. And to be, a beacon, or even like a light shining, hey, come over here for expression, has been really cool to witness. And it feels really important as an evolutionary shift on this planet is happening.
Yay. I want to come to one of your events.
Yes.
I'm sure they're amazing.
Yeah, well, we're flying people on a private seaplane to a private beach and staying in luxury tree houses this November 30th. So. Oh. In the jungles of Nicaragua.
Oh, snap.
So,
okay.
Yeah, we do them twice a year. So.
Sounds fun. Yeah, that sounds really visionary as well. Wow, tree houses, huh?
Yeah, we brought everyone to a castle in Italy, and I was like, how do I top a castle in Italy? It's like, oh, we put people on a private seaplane and they stay in luxury tree houses. Wow. That would do it. And then, of course, like cacao and sound and fire and all these other activation things.
Yeah, of course, a multifaceted approach. Why am I not surprised?
Absolutely. Pattern interrupts. I think the best way to facilitate long-term integration and learning. So.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other nuggets you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think the last piece I just want to share is just around the practice of compassion and gratitude. And I found that for myself, I went through so many of my early years of my life, running that 6-figure company at 18, 7-figure company at 22, just being in this stage of success that I didn't ever actually get to enjoy it. And I didn't not only not get to enjoy it, I never even felt the experience of success, because I was always on to the higher peak, the next mountaintop, or the next thing. And I find now I've created this practice of celebrating the wins. And, with my first event, I was like, this is going to be the first time that I really celebrate every step. I was like, if I get one person to come to my first event, then I'm taking myself out to dinner. And like a week later I did. And I was like, okay, but if I get 5, then we're like going to get a glass of wine and dinner. And I got to 5 and I was like, there's just no way no more people are going to come. And then finally, when we sold it out at 30, I took myself to a really nicest restaurant, took my partner out, and we really celebrated. And I really got to feel the direct experience of having a vision executing on the vision, and then reprogramming, giving my body the stimulation, the sensation of this is what success feels like. So kind of like a dopamine hit, I could train my receptors to know and feel that I'm successful. And if you're starting out on this journey of entrepreneurship or this visioning in this way, giving yourself these little games or these little hits to feel success, little marks on the board, when you have that direct feeling of that, whenever you have a bad day, which happens to all of us, or a cry, which happens to me many times a week, is that, you can actually have that experience to outweigh the other experiences. And so I would offer that, first and foremost, is to celebrate that. And also for those tuning in, just acknowledging yourself in this moment as well. I mean, it takes something to be in this conversation and conversations like this. And it's not the normal. And to just be able to have come so far in your journey in this moment that you're here, it's just worth celebrating. And I just commend you all for listening in. And it's like, hell yeah to you guys and
hell
all
yeah.
of us.
Hell yeah.
Because it's like us being willing that is allowing ourselves and our community and the people coming after us to keep growing and showing up in their light. And so,
yeah, beautifully said. I want to echo that too to the listeners. It's true that if you're making it to the end of this conversation, if you're listening to these words right now, really give yourself a pat on the back for showing up and investing this time in yourself, and knowing that you're finding tools and inspiration and empowerment here to move forward on your specific special journey in life.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Jules.
Yeah, thanks for having me
Love
on.
Connecting with you, yogis, traveling yomads. We're yomads. We're yoga nomads. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show, and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.